Welcome to the how-to video on the Risk Management Graduation Model Assessment Tool, which has been developed by the RMGM Risk Management Initiative in Microfinance. I'll refer to this tool as the RMGM Assessment Tool going forward. A detailed explanation of the RMGM framework is provided in the RMGM for Microfinance Institutions paper available for download at www.rminitiative.org. In this video, I'll be quickly going through each sheet with you to ensure you have the know-how to self-assess your financial institution using this tool and discover your level of adherence to the RMGM framework. There are two types of RMGM assessment tools, one for non-deposit-taking institutions and another for deposit-taking institutions. The RMGM assessment tool is also available for download at www.rminitiative.org. Please make sure you have the appropriate assessment tool in front of you. For this video, I have pulled up the assessment tool for the deposit-taking institutions. On the homepage, a few things I wanted to point out. First, ensure you have the latest version of RMGM assessment tool. The RMGM has been developed and reviewed by some of the key risk management experts in the industry and piloted in 14 different countries. Should you have any questions on the assessment tool, technical support is available by emailing info@rminitiative.org, and additional resources available to you on the RIM website as well. Moving on to overview and instructions. This page provides you a summary description of what the RMGM assessment tool is and how to use it. Start with identification of your institution's tier level. Then assess your level of adherence to the RMGM guidelines per your tier level. After the assessment with this tool, you'll have clarity in your institution's risk management gap areas, which allows you to begin strategic discussions within your planning process for improvement and graduation through the RMGM over time. The RMGM assessment is carried out within the framework of RIM's Risk Management House. The Risk Management House is an analogy of a microfinance institution, its formal risk management function, and the relationship between that function and different aspects of the organization. A strong organizational foundation is the basis upon which a formal risk management function is built. The stronger your foundation, the better chance your institution has at creating a formal risk management system that functions well. The formal risk management function depicted by the floor and the pillars ultimately impacts the ability of your microfinance institution to achieve its financial and social goals depicted by the roof. You should see each component of the risk management house as impacting each other. Your institution's ever-evolving business model requires a continuous improvement of both its risk management capabilities as well as its organizational foundation to succeed. Essentially, running this RMGM assessment tool will help you see what your institution's risk management house looks like. So now moving into tier identification. RIM uses Microrate's tier definitions when determining a microfinance institution's tier category in the RMGM. The categories that Microrate uses to assess an institution's tier category are sustainability, size, and transparency. RIM has included other to indicate other aspects critical to RMGM assessment process. In this case, this is either institutions which are deposit-taking or non-deposit-taking in nature. Just to give you an example, let's say you're a microfinance institution that has maintained positive return on assets for at least 2 of the last 3 years, no less than negative 5% in return on assets in the last 3 years, positive trend in ROA in the last 2 years, and has an asset size of a little over $5 million US, is regulated, and has received a rating. Let's say your institution has audited financial statements for at least the last 3 years and is deposit-taking. As you'll see, the RMGM assessment tool actually populates what your tier category would be. Keep in mind that you may have slightly different tier identification determined by your central bank, funders, or holding company, but for the purpose of this tool, we'll identify our example institution according to the parameters shown here, which have been adopted from Microrate's tier definition. Moving on to the assessment part of the tool. We'll go through the risk management house components indicated on tabs A2 through A7, beginning from foundations. The RMGM covers the foundations of formal risk management through the categories of governance and strategy, risk culture, internal control, and MIS. On all the sheets, you'll find the categories within the risk management house components on the very left-hand side. Next to the categories, you'll see the RMGM guidelines, which you are assessing your institution against. What you want to look for are the guidelines for your tier category identified in the previous step. So today's example was categorized as Tier 2. Then, as you're assessing yourself, what you want to do is assess against the Tier 2 guidelines. Column J is where you fill out your own self-assessment against the guidelines that you are running through. So for instance, for Tier 2 institution, I'd be reading up-to-date institutional bylaws. For this row, I would click here for the assessment to get a drop-box menu. The choices are simple: adheres, partially adheres, does not adhere. I'm going to choose partially adhere. Perhaps I'm remembering that we do have institutional bylaws, but it has not yet been updated. Then to your right, there is an area where you can add comments for future reference. So here I'm just going to add is not up to date. The gray boxes here are where you are scored per tier level. A full point for adherence, half for partial adherence, and 0 for no adherence. At the end, your score is divided by the possible maximum score, which is the formula for percentage of adherence. There are certain guidelines that may not be applicable to you depending on which tier you're in. For a guideline which does not exist, there is no scoring. From here onward until the Financial and Social Goals tab, you'll repeat the same assessment process in the same manner by filling out your level of adherence with any relevant notation in each of the RMGM risk management categories. All right, so moving on to strategic risk. The RMGM looks at strategic risk through the categories of governance risk and strategic risk. You may be asking yourself at this point, what is the difference between these categories and governance and strategy under foundations? For such questions, your answers can be found in RIM's published RMGM for Microfinance Institutions paper. Once again, this paper is available for free download at www.riminitiative.org. The RMGM framework provides the types of risk management policies, limits, risk management tools, and risk monitoring tools that your institution should use to help manage risks. So just like how you did under the foundations, you then need to assess your institution's level of adherence across the different guidelines as per your tier level. Enter some text and comments in terms of how and why you're scoring the way you are, and at the end you'll get a scoring. Next is A4, credit risk. Credit risk management areas are categorized between credit transaction risk and portfolio risk. Once again, the RMGM provides guidelines in policies, limits, risk management tools, and risk monitoring tools. Next is financial risk. We would walk through the same process through financial risk and its subcategories: liquidity risk, interest rate risk, foreign exchange risk, investment portfolio risk, capital adequacy risk. One thing to point out here is that deposit-taking institutions have more complex financial risks to manage, and therefore the RMGM framework provides more detailed guidelines here in comparison to the framework for non-deposit-taking institutions. A6, operational risk. The categories are people risk, process risk, systems risk, external events risk, and legal and compliance risk. Once again, under each category, we see assessment areas related to policies, limits, risk management tools, and risk monitoring tools. Just like the other tabs, fill out your level of adherence. So last but not least, we have financial and social goals, which is the roof of the risk management house. Once again, the categories are social results, profitability, efficiency, and productivity, as well as the assessment areas related to policies, limits, risk management tools, and risk monitoring tools. These are the performance areas in which your risk management function should be monitoring. Now let me quickly complete this tool to show you the output of the tool. Now that you have completed your own self-assessment, the output pages are automatically generated for you as a snapshot of your institution's risk management gaps. There is a Tier 3 output, Tier 2 output, Tier 1 output. In the case that we're looking at today, I'm interested in the Tier 2 output since my financial institution was identified as Tier 2. So let's take a look. What the RMGM assessment tool provides is 3 visual representations of your scoring. First one is a table, second is a bar, and third is a spider web chart with our scores per risk management house components: the foundations, strategic risk floor, and the pillars and the roof. In this example, your institution's total score is 78.8%. Today's example institution scored the lowest in operational risk. Perhaps you then want to revisit the guidelines in operational risk to review in detail of where your risk management gaps may be. I would like to remind you at this point that even though your institution's level of adherence to RMGM is expressed in a percentage and a score, what's more important to focus on is to recognize the risk management gaps and beginning a strategic conversation with your CEO and board on how to improve in those areas to ensure your institution is prepared for formalized risk management in the future. To do this, try to incorporate your discussions from RMGM into the strategic and business planning process to address the gaps that have been identified by using this tool. This will ensure that your institution's risk management capabilities are appropriate as your institution grows. Be flexible while keeping aligned with your future plans. By the way, if you wanted to compare how you would have scored against other tier categories in risk management, you simply need to check the output tabs of those tiers. So as you see, you also have scoring in Tier 2, Tier 3, as well as Tier 1. We hope that this video was useful for you to get a quick understanding of what the RMGM assessment tool is and how to use it. For further information and to download the RMGM assessment tool, please visit RIM's website, www.riminitiative.org, or contact RIM via email at info@riminitiative.org.